Okay. Just give it a moment to make sure it's actually working. Okay, it's working. Hey, how's it going? I don't know what to start with. I don't know if I should start with weather forecasting because I'm kind of worn out after forecasting today. But I do have a weekly overlook that I'm planning on doing tomorrow. I'm doing pretty good. I don't know if I should start with forecasting this week or if I should go work on live stream elements because I definitely want to improve the live stream elements on the stream because they look kind of bad in my opinion. They're definitely an improvement from what we had a while back, but I feel like I could just do some things differently. So I don't know if I should start with forecasting first or not. Hmm. I mean, we can probably at least look at models. Uh, End of this week is supposed to be on March 5th or May 5th. Let's start off with our ensemble forecasts, our global ensemble. See what it may be saying as far as an overall upcoming risk potentially. See how well models are agreeing. Let me pull up Epic Pen here in a moment so I can detail what I'm showing or what I'm saying here. So you guys can actually know what I'm talking about. I can point some stuff out to you. So this is what's currently ongoing. We have a upper level low here with a jet advecting into the southern central plains, Mississippi River valleys, and Midwest there. It is negatively tilted. This is leading severe thunderstorms in the south there, but definitely lower end compared to the last 2 days. This looks like it's gonna clear out and slow down. It could either slow down or it just looks like model agreement is just terrible for that trough as it exits. To me, it looks like it's more just model agreements getting worse towards then. It also looks like we may have another trough here that may advect out of the west. There's terrible model agreements with this though. This is an extremely fuzzy signal. But definitely interesting. Then we also have subtropical jet that is advecting out of the south. This is towards the end of the week. That jet though will definitely need to be watched. This jet that may be there, but there doesn't look like there's too much model agreement because it's just so weak flow. Yeah, there's your signal there with that trough, but it's extremely hard to really tell too. Looks like after like the second models just don't want to really agree. So we're probably not gonna really look at our ensembles because model agreement is just kind of bad for that area. So we're gonna have to stick with our deterministic, unfortunately. GFS definitely has a really good signal towards the end of the week with this trough. Okay, so it actually does look like it may slow, that trough that's currently impacting there may slow down a little bit. Also looks like we may get a little bit of a short wave that may split from this trough here. We actually have two areas of low pressure. Have this area of low pressure here, then another area of low pressure here. We have two separate areas of low pressure. This is probably more of a short wave here. That looks like it's probably going to detach from the one to the north and continue to move across the eastern half of the United States. And then off to the north, it definitely looks like it is actually going to be slowing down. It doesn't appear to be just lack of model agreement. Agreements. It just seems to actually be slowing down. Then there's your powerful jet. Your really powerful jet there that's going to impact around May 1st for the northern central plains to the Midwest. A little trough that's going to work its way in slowly. That definitely looks like it may lead to some severe thunderstorms. We actually have a day 5. We have a day 5, or no, day 4, 15%. So day 4 right now would actually be around this time. So all that little development there, you can definitely tell that there's some development there. But overall, it's just a little bit more on the lower end side of things, especially with the fact that we have hardly 200 millibar or hardly any flow at 500 millibars. That'll be interesting to watch because the majority of our flows up to the north. Definitely looks like we will definitely get a short wave with that to start off with our 500 millibar jet. And then we're going to have the main trough that's going to impact the north there. Let me pull up a Google Doc here. I typically like to make weekly overlooks in Google Doc. Kind of broke my habit of doing them in doing regular forecasts, in-depth forecasts in Google Docs, which is kind of a bad habit for me to break. What day is this? I don't know what day this is by now. Okay, it's 3:85. That's for tomorrow though, because I'm gonna make this forecast tomorrow. This weekly overlook day 385. Weekly overlook for 29/24. Okay. I'll keep the dock here so you guys can see it. I'll keep the dock here. Alright. I'm not gonna write anything just yet because it does. I haven't really seen how well this how well this agrees with other models. So this is frame 96. Okay. Definitely gonna need to work on model agreement, but it does look like the bare minimum is the fact that it's going to impact the northern central plains there into the Midwest. It's definitely faster on some model runs, so we'll definitely have to watch it. But yeah, that definitely will probably bring a severe thunderstorm risk in the second half of the week. And what about that 200 millibar jet? It's going to impact pretty soon, earlier on in the week. There's actually some really good agreement with it. Just it definitely wibbles or wobbles around. And it is downtrending in overall strength compared to previous model runs. You definitely see that sharp downtrend there. That's starting at nearly 90, nearly 100 knots. It drops down to 70 knots. That's a substantial downtrend. So it is slowing down. Still definitely a good signal there though with that. And models just aren't really agreeing on the overall strength. It definitely agrees pretty well on the fact that overall where it's going to impact. And it is negatively tilted. That has actually been almost certain with this. Actually, I think there is maybe one model. Yeah, this is positively tilted. A lot of it actually seems to be more neutral. Definitely becomes more negatively tilted as it moves into the plains. Okay, so the Euro model as well as GFS actually agrees pretty well with the fact that there's actually going to be a trough in this region. What about that 200 millibar jet? Or not 200 millibar, that upper level jet that's gonna impact the plains first. Actually, some really good agreement there. It's actually extremely good agreement. Even looks like models are agreeing on some development back towards Iowa, southern Minnesota, even back into Kansas there along the leading edge of that jet. It's actually some really good agreement on this system. Let's switch back over to our GFS, and then we'll look at our various trends. I want to see how moisture, which in turn will lead to our instability, is going to be affected through this week, how that may affect a risk for severe thunderstorms. Actually, it looks like the majority, okay, with this run at least, the majority of our moisture is definitely cooled down a little bit across the central plains from the first trough and the first cold front, but it returns extremely quickly, even upwards of 70 dew points by the 30th. That will definitely allow for a dry line setup here, and actually it looks like we may be able to get a little bit of a dry notch here to Kansas and Oklahoma. Definitely going to need to watch that there, because that could definitely be a really good signal for severe thunderstorms. As far as our quality of our moisture, there's definitely some really good quality on our moisture as well too, with a moist layer that extends up to around not 900, I would say around 800 millibars. It gets close to, it's mainly between 700 and 850 millibars, but definitely a lot of instability as well. Okay, values upwards of 4,000, the mid 4,000s there. Definitely lacking in storm relative felicity, definitely lacking in our low level jet there. At most, that would support maybe a 5% tornado risk. Actually, it does look like this isn't going to be a slowing trend either. For early May, it looks like we are going to get constant moisture advection out of the south. Expect just with this model run though. This is just one model run. But man, definitely agreeing in an active pattern here. Definitely have that moisture set up there for the first of May. Then with that other trough that pushes through, we actually do get development along the dry line and overall more forcing from that trough. This may play out like last week, to be honest, with the fact that we're going to get one first jet slash trough that's going to maybe prime for some severe thunderstorms, and then we're going to get the second trough with overall more forcing and potentially a greater risk for severe thunderstorms. But let's go to our upper level moisture, because we need to see the quality of our moisture, how high it extends. So let's start off with our 850 millibar. If we see drier air higher up in our atmosphere at 850 millibars, we won't really have the best moisture quality, which is definitely a concern, especially with the fact that we're going to see that first cold front that's going to push through. But it actually looks like we're going to see some really fast recovery. Yeah, that's definitely a really deep moist layer. It's a little bit more of a saturated atmosphere, but definitely a really deep moist layer there. It's not extremely deep, but it is definitely moderately deep. Definitely supportive of some severe thunderstorms. Oops, I don't want to... Okay. It's too early to really tell too many like really minute details about this. But by the look of just this run, we will look at other runs, but just this run looks really good. Oh, that's a large amount of instability there. At the surface there, that's definitely some pretty decent instability along the dry line, because we have some much greater moisture. So we have the first risk for severe. Okay, so we have the first cold front that pushes through, but we have what seems to be rapid recovery right after that. And it continues to support multiple. Looks like we may get multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms along that dry line. With that 500 millibar jet aloft, we definitely have much more subtle forcing. Definitely much more subtle forcing, and we're gonna see much less speed shear across this region, which will definitely be a little bit more of a issue, especially on May 1st, with the fact that we don't really have a proper trough in this region. But further off to the north, if we can get moisture to extend up north, then we could definitely see a pretty big risk for severe thunderstorms. But the majority of our forcing will definitely be a little bit more to the north. That's one of my main uncertainties, is how much forcing we're going to get with the positioning of our troughs. Definitely uncertainty as far as how quickly moisture and instability is expected to return, because we've only looked at one model run so far. Alright, so this is what GFS is saying for our risk for severe thunderstorms, or at least rain showers this week. That first round that we're going to see today is going to organize into more of a linear fashion, but then die off, mainly being more limited to the south and the Dixie states around the Mississippi River Valley, further down to the south there. We'll still get some rain showers. Oh, that's interesting. Definitely a really indicative, more discrete mode from our GFS, which is rare to see a very indicative, really clear, discrete mode from that. But that's likely as a result of the fact that we don't have as much forcing across this region. But that's definitely more of an uncertainty and could be more of a limiting factor to our risk for severe thunderstorms. Same with the second as well. Have another risk for severe thunderstorms there. And then again on the third. Maybe again on the fourth there. Maybe a little bit more development further down to the south and across Texas with that subtropical jet on the fifth there. Definitely doesn't look like we're going to have too much activity across the northern plains. Even though that's where the majority of our forcing seems to be. So let's look at bulk shear. So this run is indicating a lot of shear being introduced on the second to the fifth here with that trough. Let's see what 500 millibars says, because I don't know really how much that matches up. And there's definitely uncertainty with where our positioning of the trough is going to be. Definitely a little bit more of a limited risk down to Oklahoma, because it does seem like our trough and our instability is definitely going to be on the more off-centered side of things. But it does look like shear may be introduced into the Central Plains, even down into Texas on the 3rd to the 5th. And then our subtropical jet definitely leads to a lot of shear across Texas there. Definitely could support a later risk for severe thunderstorms when our subtropical jet strengthens again later on this week. Could definitely see some development along the subtropical jet. We will definitely see a much lower risk for tornadoes on the first there, May 1st, because due to the fact that the majority of our forcing is going to be to the north, we will not really have much to really support a low-level jet across this region. We definitely may get a low-level jet that could strengthen here on the second and maybe the third even. Maybe not the third, but models indicate a strong low-level jet on the second. And that's a powerful low-level jet that strengthens into next week. It's a really powerful low-level jet. But that's next week, though. Let's go back to storm relative felicity. See what we may see as far as directional shear. It's kind of all over the place, to be honest. It's honestly not really a whole lot of shear across this region. It's definitely a little bit more on the moderate side of things. It's honestly kind of hard to tell with our more low resolution models. They're kind of all over the place. But I definitely think we're going to see a much more settled tornado risk due to the fact that our forcing is further north. But still, we could definitely see a tornado risk nonetheless. That is definitely possible. But that's my main uncertainty, is the positioning of our forcing. And the recovery of the atmosphere behind our first thing there, our cold front setup and our risk for severe thunderstorms that's impacting today. Kind of want to get some music going. I may not write the forecast tonight. I may write it tomorrow. But models will change tomorrow. Let me get some music going. I love how Spotify has an X for one of their ads. Like, you can click the X to get rid of the ad, but it just doesn't work and you have to click dismiss. It's always funny. What is it in the car? That's interesting. And then we have Eminem. Oh, apparently these are songs that they pick for me. Okay. Yeah, I was about to say that some of these artists on here definitely may not be in a driving mix, a daily drive mix. Here, I'll do this. I'm not going to play it because I don't know if it's copyrighted or not, but I'll hear it. You guys won't. Actually, I wonder if there's a copyright free playlist on Spotify for more chill music. Do they even have copyright free on here? Oh, they do have copyright free. Oh, I don't like these. Like 50% of them are more on the lemon demon side of things. I definitely do not want to listen to that. Okay, this is nice. I still don't. I'm on the fence of actually playing it on the live stream. I'll hear it, but you guys will not. That I'm just too scared about getting struck down by the YouTube gods. Okay. I'm not going to look at convective inhibition because there's overall too much uncertainty, especially with the more deterministic GFS long range, low resolution models. So, more specific things like convective inhibition, lapse rates, cloud cover, that's all going to need to be worked out later on whenever we have the high resolution models or when we're into the more medium range side of things, where we have different models like. I don't want to say it, but the NAM model, um, and the rap model, definitely going to have more questions answered whenever we get into the medium range side of things, especially with the Euro. I don't know how well GraphCast works, but Icon. All these other models are definitely going to be much more handy when we get into the more medium range side of things with a lot of these severe weather risks that may be possible. Whether, yeah, I definitely doubt that there will be too much of a tornado risk on the first due to the fact that, again, there's not a whole lot of forcing in the upper levels. Not really much to really lead to a low level jet, so definitely going to have a lack of stimulative felicity and more straight photographs. Probably definitely going to be a little bit more of a hail risk and a damaging wind risk. If even that, we may see definitely a more damaging wind risk type of setup because of the fact that we don't really have a whole lot of forcing, not really a lot of shear to really support that much of a hail risk, but maybe some isolated large hail. Um, let's look at supercell composite for this model run. See what it thinks of the overall risk of severe thunderstorms. Definitely have supercell composite model run. Supercell things there. Supercell composite. Indicating the risk for severe thunderstorms, but this is what the majority of our photographs will probably look like. This is probably what the majority of our storms may look like. We could definitely see some really nice structure and definitely potentially a risk for tornadoes. We definitely have at least a little bit of curvature in the low levels of photograph, but we hardly have a whole lot of bulk shear. That is a really compact tail of the photograph there, and we don't really have a whole lot of speed shear to really support too much separation of our downdraft and our updraft. We definitely have some shear being indicated here that at least gets into that classic supercell range, but it's definitely on the edge there a little bit more. Definitely have some veering of the winds with height there, so definitely could see the potential for some tornadoes being possible. Don't worry about LFC and LCL just yet. That is a really deep moist layer, though. actually have some high analog, or not analog, but supercell composite things on our sounding. At most, I think we may see at least 2,200, sorry, not 2,200 meters squared a second squared of storm relative velocity. Definitely have some high supercell composite parameter values, though, which is actually kind of wild. I'm very supportive of potential for severe thunderstorms, even with a lack of strong forcing aloft. Definitely my main uncertainty, however, definitely indicates really good risk for severe thunderstorms, even with the lack of our separated mid levels there. Definitely a lack of bulk shear. This is also surface to 500, so this isn't 200, but you can really see there. Also, that sounding was taken more so towards the north, where we do have a little bit more forcing into Kansas. We're definitely gonna have to watch for a window for our risk for severe thunderstorms if this continues to trend. If we don't see this shift to the south, if we don't see our risk for severe thunderstorms shift to the north, then definitely gonna have to watch to see where the majority of our forcing is with that trough. Hey, thank you for tuning in, St. John Catholic Church. Um, there a flood at Coffeeville. I would have to assume that would be around the Oklahoma region because of just how much rain happened last night. Like, that was, even on top of the tornado risk, that was still detrimental flooding. Definitely had a insane amount of rainfall and definitely a huge flooding risk across Oklahoma yesterday, on top of that tornado risk. I'm gonna switch back to our supercell composites because we've only looked at the first so far. To the second actually has a lower risk for severe thunderstorms there. I don't know if there's more forcing. Maybe I want to switch to radar omega here, because I can put overlays on. We'll still hold on. I do want to turn off our I do want to turn off our day and night layer. There's also a tornado warning. Let's check that out real quick. Wow, that's a really well-defined supercell here. Definitely more modest rotation, but we could definitely still see a tornado come out of that. It's definitely a little bit larger and still tight, though. Still not really picking up much as far as storm relative velocity. Or not storm relative velocity, storm relative velocity. No indicator of it being on the ground, but here's your warning text. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over Ratcliffe, moving northeast at 25 miles per hour. Hazard tornado radar indicated. So this isn't a confirmed tornado. What app is this? This is Radar Omega. It does have a one-time payment, but then you can also buy additional subscriptions for some other cool things, and I really like it. I do have some complaints though, and I do really wish they did add some things. But locations in or near the path include Ozark, Branch, Etna, Meg, Atlas, or Altus, Denning, and Peter Pender. If you live in the affected area, please take shelter immediately. Again, even if there's not a tornado on the ground at this time, one could touch down at any time. This isn't going to be severe thunderstorm coverage though. This is not going to be a severe thunderstorm coverage live stream. Just thought that was interesting to check out. So I'm going to turn off our warning so our stuff isn't too cluttered. No, I don't want ARRR. Okay, so let's go back over to our supercell composite. And I can turn on our 500 millibar wind overlay so we can see where it's showing a trough and where we're going to see our forcing. Yeah, okay, so this is some really high supercell composite parameter values. Even on our global models, this is still really high. We're still definitely going to see a risk for severe thunderstorms with that, even if the majority of our forcing is still off to the north. We will definitely see more speed shear to support potentially more of a risk of severe thunderstorms off to the north there. But I think it depends on how far north our moisture is expected to extend. If we actually switch to our dew point values here, our moisture does extend upwards, at least the upper 60s into northeastern Kansas there, with surface-based Cape, upwards of 1,000 that extends all the way up into northern Iowa there. So where we do have our more stronger forcing, we could definitely see the potential for more of a risk of severe thunderstorms off to the north there. And our surface low is definitely not in the way. We definitely see maybe a little bit more of a risk for severe thunderstorms to the north, because that will be where the majority of our forcing will be. As far as our low-level jet goes, again, we're not really going to see too much of a tornado risk. Yeah, we have hardly a low-level jet. What about Coffeyville, Kansas? Hold on, I'm going to have to look up where Coffeyville is real quick. Oh, okay, so you're in the area that got just absolutely trained by a bunch of tornado warnings yesterday. As far as Coffeyville, Kansas, that is definitely in potentially more of a hot spot for severe thunderstorms for this week. That's definitely gonna be along where our dry lines are expected to set up, and we could definitely see some severe thunderstorms develop along this dry line around the Coffeyville region. So I would definitely be on the lookout for the potential of severe thunderstorms this week for the Coffeyville region. In fact, further north you go, moving into more southern Kansas, that is definitely where we're going to see more forcing and overall better risk for severe thunderstorms due to that greater forcing. But still, seems to be mainly out of the way of the primary trough. Yeah, the majority of our forcing is still going to be off to the north, but definitely could, depending on where our trough is positioned, it could definitely trend further down to the south and see overall more forcing to the south. But still, definitely at least a low end risk for severe thunderstorms. But our instability will definitely be able to support some severe thunderstorm development for the majority of this week. Oops. I was looking at some people's snaps that people have sent me. Um, so let's look at let's go back to our supercell composite. I'm still kind of curious about how our risk for severe thunderstorms uh, may look later on, especially just out of the May 31st. Actually, May 30 or May not May 31st, March or April 31st. It definitely has 1 day for severe thunderstorms. Same with May 1st. May 1st and April 31st definitely gonna have the potential for severe thunderstorms. These are some really high supercell composite parameter values, especially this far out. Definitely indicating a pretty high risk for severe thunderstorms this far out across the Kansas down into Oklahoma region. Still not as much forcing. You can see it in our contours there. The majority of our trough is off to the north. This kind of this line here is the southern, where the majority of the southernmost extent of this trough is for this model run at least. We could definitely see it trend maybe down to the south in southern Kansas, and see a little bit more shear across this region. It really all depends on how far north our trough goes. Let's go to the to May 2nd here. Still indicating our severe weather potential. And then around the 3rd, which is when we have that other trough, that's going to push into the Central Plains. Could see some severe thunderstorm development off of that, but definitely not, definitely going to be clearing out a little bit more than it is really more supportive. Will there be a tornado in Coffeyville this weekend? As far as if there will be a tornado, it's more of a possibility than a certainty right now. It's definitely more of a possibility, especially with how things go. Still a lot of definitely some uncertainty and things that need to be figured out. But at least a low end tornado risk does seem possible for the Coffeyville region this week, especially anywhere from April 31st to probably around May 2nd to May 3rd. It depends on how the majority of our factors depend on how far north our trough is going to trend, and because that will support, depending on how far north it goes, may not really see too strong of a low level jet and may not have too much directional shear to support a tornado risk. But if that were to trend further down to the south, again, our trough doesn't really have a whole lot of agreement on where it's going to impact. We have a vague, rough area of where it's going to move into. So it could very well move further down to the south and be overall more impactful, but it depends. We're still really far out. But more things will be figured out with time. Let's look at our surface-based cape. I'm still kind of curious about how our instability is going to be affected this week, because we have that first round of severe thunderstorms that's going to impact, and depending on moisture return and instability return, if that atmosphere can recover quick enough, then we could definitely see potentially a greater risk for severe thunderstorms on April 30th. By minimum, our instability should return by May 1st to May 2nd. But for for April 30th, it's definitely a little bit more of an uncertainty because we just had that dry line push through, and we'll have about a day or so for it to recover. So depending on how quickly our moisture can return, how much instability can build across this region, it will definitely be a little bit more of an uncertainty how quickly that moisture can return. It's definitely one of the major uncertainties. All right, thank you for tuning in, St. John's Catholic Church. Hope you have a good night. Down into the 3rd though. I'm surprised I don't. Why do I not have surface based, or why do I not have the 500 millibar? Is there live tomorrow? Um, maybe I may do one whenever I make that live stream element of to improve our live streams, but I will make that live probably, but maybe also the Holisty update that I was talking about that I'm probably gonna do some live stream gameplay for. Uh, that trailer for that update has come out, but we don't have a release date yet, which is kind of odd. Usually they put the release date in the trailer, so um, we will wait on that. May be out tomorrow. It really all depends, but no release date on that. But we may have a live stream tomorrow. All right, thank you for tuning in, St. John's Catholic Church. Hope you have a good night. Hmm. Yeah, the return of instability is definitely going to be the one of the more uncertain factors, especially with that dry line that moved through previously. Let me turn on our overlays for our trough. See where our forcing is on top of our instability. Yeah, on the second or the third here, when that second trough moves into the region, we will have instability that does extend all the way up into Iowa, with the majority of it being across Oklahoma and southern Kansas. That trough will definitely be a little bit more to the north, but definitely also affect more so into this region, especially compared to that previous jet that was up north. So depending on how far south it trends on the second and the third, that may be our biggest days for severe thunderstorms this week. And then as we move into the third, as that trough pushes in, that will slowly clear out more instability. It may support a little bit of a risk for severe thunderstorms with cold air infection that will likely form at least either a dry line or a cold front. Um, definitely a little bit more of a dry line factor, but that's a lot of moisture. So as that clears out to the south towards the end of the week, we could definitely see the potential for severe thunderstorms across the southern central plains in the Mississippi River Valley with that trough as it clears out into the last couple of days of this week. So mainly from the 3rd to the 5th. The 5th is Sunday. But we will also have that subtropical jet that's going to advect into this region. And that will also be an aid in risk for severe thunderstorms across the southern central plains in the Mississippi River Valley. I do think our best risk for severe thunderstorms will definitely be more so on the third, not the third, anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th, maybe more on the 3rd to the 5th, but definitely on the later half of this week. With some chances for severe thunderstorms early on this week, but it really all depends on how quickly our moisture can return and the forcing from our trough and its positioning. Um, I've seen as much as I need to see for this on Radar Omega. I've seen as much as I needed to. So let's hop back over to pivotal weather here so we can look at model trends for certain things. So let's start off with our moisture. So we'll start off with moisture at the surface. With the thing on the 30th or May 1st. So this is frame 51. Frame 51, and we'll go to model trend loop. That's actually some really good model agreement. We definitely have a substantial downtrend in our moisture. So our moisture return definitely may be a little bit more on the slower side of things, especially compared to previous model runs, but definitely has some pretty decent moisture. Dew points in the low 70s are definitely really good, even if it is on more of a downtrend. But we'll watch trends because that is definitely on its more downtrend. Ooh, we don't really have the best agreement. Are ARRRs in range? That's interesting. Oh, well, I guess the 30th is our day 3 outlook. Actually, what is our day 3 outlook? Ah, okay. That makes more sense. I do think that it is good to have this slight risk up north because that is where the majority of our forcing is going to be. But our moisture is definitely not going to be as strong that far north. The majority of our moisture being further down to the south, but we also may have that slight risk extended down to this region. With the majority of our risk being up to the north because that's where the majority of our forcing is. But it's kind of a balance beam, if that makes sense. One side has less moisture but more forcing. The other side has more moisture but less forcing. Or did I just say the same thing twice? One side has more moisture but less forcing. The other side has less moisture but more forcing. So it's kind of a balance between. So either or could still see the potential for severe thunderstorms, potentially a little bit more to the north because we need forcing for severe thunderstorms regardless. If we have a lack of forcing, we definitely see a little bit more of a lower end risk for severe thunderstorms further down to the south. But we definitely have much better moisture, so that could definitely lead to a better risk for severe thunderstorms down south as well, especially with that dry line. Even if we don't have the best forcing, we'll still have that dry line there, and that could definitely that will definitely fire off some storms. So it kind of balances out, if that makes sense. Actually, looks like GFS may be a little bit more of an outlier here. GFS seems to be the only one outside of the the RRFSA model that indicates some 70s in the warm sector. So GFS seems to be a little bit more of an outlier actually on this sort of thing. Um, so we'll definitely have to watch moisture trends, but GFS seems to be a little bit more of an outlier with some greater moisture compared to some other models across the Central Plains. But what is certain is that it does look like a dry line is going to form regardless. Yeah, GFS definitely has substantially more moisture than some of our models. We definitely have a lot of moisture on our NSSL MPAS RT. Still, even regardless, if we don't see dew points in the low 70s, this is dew points in the mid to upper 60s and approaching the low 70s is still definitely a lot of moisture and very supportive of the potential for severe thunderstorms. I definitely see a lot of instability come out of that regardless, even if it isn't in the low 70s, and we could still could see an uptrend in moisture. Further up to the north, though, where we actually have our slight risk, we definitely do have less moisture. It is still definitely decent with dew points upwards of the mid to low 60s, and the mid to upper 50s. Definitely a little bit more on the moderate side of things, but still will definitely support some decent instability, and we'll definitely be able to fuel our risk for severe thunderstorms, even if we have less moisture, but are more forcing. Our dew points are still definitely sufficient for a potentially a much larger risk for severe thunderstorms. This moisture, the lack of dew points in the 70s will not be as impactful as you think. We still definitely have some really decent moisture across this region, and our models are definitely indicating a fast return of moisture. But as far as our quality of moisture goes, that's definitely a little bit more of an uncertain thing. Our Euro model has less moisture aloft. GFS definitely has a lot of moisture aloft. NAM is more in agreement with the GFS, but it has a significantly drier warm sector outside of just the dry line. Same with the RAP and the RDPS. Same with the Euro model. GFS is definitely looking like it's more of an outlier here. Let's look at some of these soundings. A deep moist layer there extending upwards of past 850 millibars. RAP extends slightly less than GFS. What about RDPS? Or RDP? Yeah, RDPS. That one extends more so along the lines of the GFS. Euro looks like it has deeper moisture, but definitely looks like we're going to have at least some pretty decent moisture return across this region. Definitely seems like it's going to be pretty fast. But our warm sector itself may definitely be a little bit more drier. You can definitely tell that there is a dry pocket in the majority of our warm sector aloft. But along our dry line, we definitely have a lot of moisture. So, and that moisture also does extend upward up to Iowa as well. Definitely some pretty decent moisture that extends up in the slight risk region that we looked at earlier. Definitely could see the potential for severe thunderstorms there, regardless of lift or regardless of forcing. Again, our forcing will definitely be a major playing factor, but definitely have some really decent moisture. Our models have been definitely trending towards some fast moisture return and some pretty decent moisture quality. Oh my god. Okay. For our most unstable Cape here, definitely a little bit more uncertainty as far as our instability, but the bare minimum does seem to be at least 2,500 joules per kilogram of instability across this region, with some models like the GFS getting upwards of 4,000 on our low resolution. And because it is a low resolution, we could see higher instability values in reality, but our ARRR definitely is a little bit more in agreement with our GFS. NAM is lower. NAM 3 kilometers is more in agreement with our NAM, but definitely a little bit less instability there. RAP definitely more limited instability, but still some pretty decent Cape values that will definitely be sufficient of a risk for severe thunderstorms. And our RRFSA definitely has less instability. Is a weaker version of our ARRR, it seems. At bare minimum, it does look like we'll have at least 2,000 joules per kilogram of instability trending from our models. Will still be sufficient to fuel the risk for severe thunderstorms regardless. It does look like the majority of that instability does translate down to our surface. So we definitely have a wide range for instability, anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 joules per kilogram of instability across this region, depending on what comes next, and heavily depending on our moisture return. But with our downturn in our moisture that you saw with our GFS, we definitely may have potentially less moisture across this region and less instability as a result. Apparently there's a flash flood emergency. Oh, there is a flash flood emergency. Oh man, I see why. Train of cells, train of supercells here with heavy rainfall. This is a particularly dangerous situation. You live in any of the affected areas. That does include actually it doesn't give a list of towns for some reason. Okay, areas included doing due to mainly rural areas, but still a particularly dangerous situation if you live in any of the affected areas. Seek high ground immediately, especially if you live in more of the lower lying areas. Again, this is life-threatening flash flooding, and this is a particularly dangerous situation if you live in the affected areas. Please get to high ground immediately. Upwards of 6 to 10 inches already across this region. Areas include South Central Trinity County. Hopefully there's no towns involved. Okay, there are a couple towns. That does include Trinity and Groveton. Again, this is a particularly dangerous situation. If you live in any of the affected areas, please get to high ground immediately. Not to shelter, but please get to high ground immediately. The one thing you don't want to do with this is get in a basement. That's the one thing you don't want to do with this flash flood emergency. Treat it like the opposite of a tornado warning. Go outside and get to the highest place possible. Don't go into the lowest place possible. Get to the highest place possible. This is like the opposite of a tornado warning. I'm gonna get the word out about this real quick. So just give me a couple minutes to do that. What I'll do is I'll leave you with the music here. Oops. Okay, turns out I turned off the music by accident, but it's whatever because we have an ad now, so you guys don't really want to hear that. Plus, it may be copyrighted. Man, it is so hot in my house right now. Okay, what about Supercell Composite? Yeah, supercell composite parameter is indicating an overall more of a risk for severe thunderstorms up into the slight risk region for anywhere from eastern Kansas, eastern Nebraska, southern Minnesota, Iowa, as a result of the fact that there's going to be overall better forcing better forcing across the more northern regions of this risk. That will support overall a better end risk for severe thunderstorms is by having some pretty decent moisture across this region. Even though we will not see dew points in the low 70s, still some pretty decent moisture, and regardless, definitely going to lead to some pretty moderate to decent instability. Definitely going to be pretty supportive of the potential for severe thunderstorms. That will really see too much as far as a tornado. Actually, I stand corrected. Especially the north there, I think we could definitely see at least a little bit of a low-level jet as a result of of some better forcing further up to the north, and that will actually kind of support a low-level jet. Pretty decent instability, very strong instability actually, and some pretty decent storm felicity as well. Definitely going to be supportive of a tornado risk as well, even if it is a little bit more on the lower side of things, because we don't have the best storm felicity, but we do have some really strong instability, especially further down to the south where we have better moisture. Let's get a box sounding of this whole environment. Yeah, definitely really limited storm felicity here, with some much more smaller curvature in the low levels of the photograph, and storm felicity upwards of 73 on this box sounding. Definitely some really decent instability though. It definitely in the more moderate range and support a low end risk for tornadoes. If I were to get a point sounding, it'll probably be different though. So let's choose Kansas. Yeah, definitely still supportive of tornadoes across. I'm sorry, I had to sneeze there. Still supportive of tornadoes though, with some pretty decent instability, upwards of 3,000 joules per kilogram, and overall better curvature in the low levels of the photograph, but still not significantly better. Just slightly greater. Still definitely very indicative of the potential for tornadoes. Across the region there, definitely see at least a small risk for tornadoes. By the look of this, I definitely think we may have at least a 5% tornado risk, depending on how strong our low level jet goes, or how strong our low level jet gets, which we can look at here actually. Actually, we do have a really powerful low level jet here, upwards of 40 to 30 knots. We'll definitely watch that because we could, at minimum, I think, get a 5% tornado risk by the looks of it. For the 30th up into the Nebraska region. And that low level jet will definitely supply that region with some shear, especially with the strong 500 millibar jet aloft, and then some strong flow out of the south at our 700 millibars. You can already kind of see how our photographs will look. But yeah, definitely a low level jet there. It's kind of hard to really tell its strength. It's kind of been all over the place because models themselves have kind of been all over the place with the overall positioning of this trough. But still, definitely could harbor a pretty decent tornado risk. I definitely think that by the time this rolls around, may see some greater composite perimeter models. Really, all depends on how moisture wants to return, how quickly it wants to return, and the quality of that moisture return. But we could definitely potentially see a. I definitely can't rule out a maybe one significant tornado with that look, especially in some of the areas where we may have Cape values upwards of 3,000, maybe some 4,000, depending on how strong our moisture return is and how quality it is. I definitely can't rule out one significant tornado at least potentially being possible. But I do think that this is more of a 5% tornado risk, especially with the more of the uncertainty definitely lingering around a 5% tornado risk for this region. But yeah, let's continue to progress further. Let's go look at May. Actually, or not May. Let's look at let's look at our storms here. All right, so that's the April 30th to May 1st event. Actually, it may have more development on May 1st as well. Doesn't look like April 30th and May 1st will be two separate dates. Same with May 2nd as well as May 3rd. It's already definitely a little bit more of a concerning look with the fact that we are having some really clear, discrete supercellular development amongst some really strong moisture return being possible. We definitely see some really strong moisture return, especially with how models have looked so far. Definitely have some really strong moisture return across the central plains. And that will support overall a more conditional risk for tornadoes. Because storms may not even form at all if we don't have enough forcing. But by the time we get into the third, we will definitely have more forcing with that trough that is going to be advecting more to the north, but still advecting into this region nonetheless, especially compared to the first jet that's going to be in the north there. But discrete supercells on our low resolution models is already not really a good look. I will definitely be watching the weather for the next couple of days, as this will definitely be a pretty big concern because even GFS has been indicating potentially more of a discrete mode. And typically it's just like storms being all over the place. But with more subtle forcing and potentially more discrete storms, if we can get a strong low level jet going, especially with more forcing across this region as that trough kind of pushes down south into this region, could get a strong low level jet going and may support a large tornado risk. Um yeah. This is proximity sounding for May 3rd, which is what we were just looking at with that more discrete development. Doesn't really look like we have a really strong low level jet and really much to support strong storm relative velocity. Um, Definitely have some curvature in the low levels of the photograph there, but storm relative velocity values upwards of 1,000 or 100, mid to upper 100s is definitely more on the weaker side of things. It really all comes down to how much forcing we're gonna get from these troughs, is positioning as well as how quickly our moisture return is going to be. But our moisture return seems to be really quick. But if we don't really get too much forcing, which seems to be the case with a lot of with the majority of these model runs, definitely may see a overall much more limited and potentially lower in risk for severe thunderstorms across the plains this week. But even with the lack of strong forcing, I do think that there may be the potential for some absolutely crazy stuff to happen. So I think this may definitely be potentially a boomer bust type of week, to be honest. There's just too many things that can go wrong, but if it all goes right, then crazy stuff could definitely happen. But details will be worked out with time. So With that being said, though, I do think I am gonna end the live stream here because it is late. It's almost midnight where I am, and I do have school tomorrow. So, uh, today definitely put this week into perspective a little bit more for me. I'll definitely look at models again before I make a weekly overlook tomorrow. Um, so yeah, these models definitely put this week into perspective for me. So we'll see how it goes. Again, definitely some crazy stuff that could happen, but it may not happen at all, depending on a multitude of factors that will be worked out with time. So, plus some other factors may be a little bit more limiting upcoming, like we may have a continuous downtrend in moisture return, which was being indicated by our GFS. Um, may see less instability, but we may see more. We could see more moisture surge pretty far to the north there, up towards regions that actually have some pretty strong forcing from those troughs. So yeah, it really all depends. But with that being said, I am gonna end the live stream. But yeah, definitely gonna be interesting this week. So thank you all for tuning in.